National Electrical Code Article 404.2 Exception No. 3 states that push buttons shall be permitted without holding contacts. Exception No. 4 states that switches shall be permitted without holding contacts in industrial establishments where the conditions of maintenance and supervision ensure that only qualified persons service the installation. However, this exception does not apply to electrical closets and mechanical rooms, which are not considered industrial establishments. Article 409.1 states that snap switches or spring-wound switches shall be rated as follows where used in lighting circuits not exceeding 5 amps, 120 volts. Spring-wound wall switches are not typically used in electrical closets and mechanical rooms due to safety concerns. In emergency situations, a hold feature allows the light to remain on even if the switch is released. Electrical closets and mechanical rooms often require constant illumination for maintenance and safety purposes. Therefore, it is against code to install spring-wound wall switches without a hold feature in electrical closets and mechanical rooms. Let's delve into a more detailed explanation of the specific National Electrical Code articles and the reasoning behind this determination. We will first examine the relevant sections of Article 404, which covers switches. Article 404.2 discusses the types of switches that are permitted and under what conditions. Exception No. 3 of this article specifically addresses push buttons, stating that they are allowed without holding contacts. This exception caters to momentary contact switches, where the circuit is only closed while the button is pressed. Exception No. 4 provides a conditional allowance for switches without holding contacts. It applies only to industrial establishments where specific conditions are met, primarily related to maintenance and supervision. A key requirement is that only qualified persons must service the installation. This exception acknowledges that in certain industrial settings, trained personnel are always present and can manage situations where a momentary switch might be appropriate. However, the critical point here is that electrical closets and mechanical rooms are explicitly excluded from this exception. These spaces are not considered industrial establishments under the NEC definition. They are often accessed by a broader range of personnel, not just qualified electricians or engineers. As such, the safety requirements for these areas are more stringent. Article 409.1 focuses on snap switches, which include spring-wound switches. It dictates that these switches must be appropriately rated for the specific lighting circuits in which they are used. For lighting circuits not exceeding 5 amps at 120 volts, the spring-wound switches must have a corresponding rating. This ensures that the switches can handle the electrical load without overheating or posing a fire hazard. Beyond the code requirements, there are practical safety concerns associated with using spring-wound switches in electrical closets and mechanical rooms. Firstly, these spaces often require constant illumination for maintenance and troubleshooting. Electrical panels, equipment, and wiring are housed in these rooms, and technicians need adequate light to perform their tasks safely. Spring-wound switches, which automatically turn off after a set time, would force technicians to repeatedly reactivate the switch, disrupting their work and potentially leading to errors. Secondly, in emergency situations, continuous lighting is crucial. If a fault occurs or a hazard is present, technicians need to be able to quickly assess the situation. A spring-wound switch that shuts off unexpectedly could obscure the problem and increase the risk of accidents. A switch with a hold feature, on the other hand, ensures that the light remains on, providing constant visibility. Thirdly, electrical closets and mechanical rooms are not always frequented by qualified personnel. While trained electricians may perform regular maintenance, other staff members may need to access these rooms for various reasons, such as checking equipment or resetting breakers. These individuals may not be familiar with the operation of spring-wound switches, and they may inadvertently turn off the lights, creating a safety hazard. To summarize, the NEC does not permit the use of spring-wound switches without a hold feature in electrical closets and mechanical rooms because these spaces are not considered industrial establishment. The code prioritizes safety and continuous illumination in these areas, and spring-wound switches do not meet these requirements. The potential consequences of using such switches include disrupted maintenance, increased risk of accidents in emergency situations, and hazards for untrained personnel. Therefore, switches with a hold feature should be installed in these spaces to ensure adequate and reliable lighting. This conclusion is reinforced by the intended use of these spaces, the potential for untrained personnel to access them, and the critical need for continuous illumination in emergency situations. In short, the installation of spring-wound switches without a hold feature in electrical closets and mechanical rooms is a code violation and a safety hazard. Now let's delve further into why the industrial establishment exception in NEC Article 404.2 does not apply to electrical closets and mechanical rooms. The key to understanding this lies in the definition of an industrial establishment as it pertains to the National Electrical Code. The NEC does not provide a specific definition of industrial establishment within Article 404 itself, but the intent can be inferred from the context of the code and other related articles. Generally, an industrial establishment is characterized by the following features. Firstly, it typically involves manufacturing, processing, or assembling goods. Secondly, it has a dedicated maintenance staff of qualified personnel who are responsible for the upkeep of the electrical systems. Thirdly, it operates under strict safety protocols and procedures that are enforced by trained supervisors. Fourthly, access to the electrical systems is restricted to qualified personnel. Electrical closets and mechanical rooms, on the other hand, do not typically possess these characteristics. While they contain electrical equipment and machinery, they are not directly involved in manufacturing or production. Furthermore, access to these rooms is often less restricted than in industrial establishments, and personnel without specialized electrical training may need to enter them for various reasons. The NEC recognizes this difference and therefore imposes stricter requirements for electrical installations in these spaces. The code prioritizes safety and reliability in electrical closets and mechanical rooms because these areas are critical for the overall operation of a facility. Failures in these systems can have widespread consequences, such as power outages, equipment malfunctions, and safety hazards. By requiring switches with a hold feature, the NEC ensures that lighting in these areas remains constant even in emergency situations or when untrained personnel are present. The argument that the spring-wound switches comply with NEC Article 409.1 is also not sufficient to justify their use in electrical closets and mechanical rooms. While Article 409.1 specifies the rating requirements for snap switches, it does not override the general safety requirements outlined in Article 404.2. In other words, even if the spring-wound switches meet the amperage and voltage ratings specified in Article 409.1, they must still comply with the provisions of Article 404.2 regarding the use of switches without holding contacts. The NEC is designed to be a comprehensive set of safety standards, and its various articles must be interpreted in conjunction with one another. It is not permissible to selectively comply with certain articles while ignoring others that are equally relevant. In this case, Article 404.2 takes precedence because it specifically addresses the use of switches without holding contacts, which is the central issue at hand. Therefore, the argument that the spring-wound switches are acceptable because they comply with Article 409.1 is not valid. Let's further illustrate the importance of continuous illumination in electrical closets and mechanical rooms with some practical examples. Imagine a scenario where a technician is working on a complex electrical panel in a dimly lit electrical closet. The technician is using a multimeter to troubleshoot a circuit, and the readings are fluctuating erratically. Suddenly, the spring-wound switch turns off, plunging the closet into darkness. The technician is startled and loses their grip on the multimeter probes, causing a short circuit. The short circuit triggers a breaker, cutting off power to a critical piece of equipment. This example demonstrates how the unexpected loss of lighting can lead to accidents and equipment malfunctions. Now consider a different scenario where a fire breaks out in a mechanical room. Smoke is filling the room, and visibility is severely limited. A maintenance worker rushes into the room to shut off the main gas valve, but the spring-wound switch turns off before they can locate the valve. The worker is forced to fumble around in the dark, increasing the risk of smoke inhalation and delaying the shutdown of the gas supply. This example highlights how continuous illumination can be crucial for safety in emergency situations. These examples underscore the importance of requiring switches with a hold feature in electrical closets and mechanical rooms. Continuous illumination is essential for both routine maintenance and emergency response. Spring wound switches, which automatically turn off after a set time, do not provide the level of reliability and safety that is required in these critical areas. In addition to the safety considerations, there are also practical reasons why spring wound switches are not well suited for electrical closets and mechanical rooms. These spaces often require frequent access by various personnel, not just trained electricians. Maintenance workers, HVAC technicians, and even cleaning staff may need to enter these rooms to perform their duties. If the lighting is controlled via spring wound switch, these individuals may find it inconvenient and frustrating to have to repeatedly reactivate the switch. This can lead to them propping the switch open with a foreign object, which is a safety hazard. Furthermore, spring wound switches are more prone to failure than standard switches. This spring mechanism can wear out over time, causing the switch to malfunction or fail completely. This can result in unexpected outages and costly repairs. For all of these reasons, it is essential to use switches with a hold feature in electrical closets and mechanical rooms. These switches provide a reliable and safe source of illumination, and they are less prone to failure than spring wound switches. By adhering to the NEC requirements and prioritizing safety, you can ensure that these critical areas are properly illuminated and that personnel can work safely and efficiently. To reiterate, the NEC provides a framework for electrical safety that is designed to protect people and property from hazards. By following the code requirements and prioritizing safety, you can create a safe and reliable electrical system that meets the needs of your facility.